Alright, y'all, so today I want to do a very quick review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Earth 1 T Titans, which is famously from the DC Earth 1 imprint. I'm going to be reviewing Volume 1 and 2. This is written by Jeff Lemire, and it's done by a few other artists. And just wanted to do my quick review of the series and what I thought of it. So, just to give you a context, Earth 1 was a title series from DC that basically took high-profile creators and artists, put them together with famous classic DC superheroes, and basically allowed them to do whatever fresh take they wanted to, right? They would also release these books in graphic novel formats, and they did for a variety of heroes, including Superman. Now, I didn't really know what to expect when I seen Earth 1 T Titans because I'm not like the huge aficionado on T Titans. You know, I grew up watching the old Cartoon Network anime series from the mid 2000s. I watched a bit of T Titans Go, sadly, and I did, like I said, I've seen them here and there in some DC stuff, in DC Comics as well. But I wouldn't say I'm the foremost expert on it, but I know the basic gist of the group, right? So when I went into this book, I was thinking that this was going to be something similar to that. And man, oh man, this book is something else. I would say this is probably one of the more radical takes on T Titans that I've ever seen. It really plays out a lot like a science fiction story more than anything involving superheroes, right? It is really different. It's kind of like a science fiction story, like some kind of conspiracy story meets Runaways from Marvel, and then of course T Titans, right? It's a very, very strange tone and combination what we got here. Regardless, I'm going to give you my quick thoughts and a little bit of a rundown what happens in Volume 1, because there was only 2 volumes of this series. It's basically an origin story, right? We have the main players of this version of Teen Titans, which is Cyborg, Tara, who, in most continuity, she's a villain, but she's good here. You have Beast Boy. You have Raven, who is radically different. Raven is more of inspired by Native American culture, which is, like I said, very radically different. Beast Boy is the same. Cyborg is very different here on how he becomes Cyborg. Instead of Victor getting into a horrific accident, here he gets, like I said, this is kind of crazy how all these Teen Titans get their powers. But basically, an alien called Starfire comes to Earth. Humans want to study her, and basically they try to graft her DNA, use some of her DNA as well from her ship and her body, and put it inside tons of children just to see what it would do to them, if it would give them powers. And turns out a lot of them died, but also a lot of them lived. And Cyborg was one of them. Cyborg had liquid metal from Starfire's ship put into him, and he slowly throughout the book gets transformed into Cyborg. I almost view this as a weird metaphorical puberty thing, but I could be wrong. But it's like a David Cronenberg transformation into Cyborg. It is very, very strange. Very much not like the traditional Cyborg. Beast Boy is mostly the same. Tara is mostly the same. She's just not really the villain here. She can still control the Earth and stuff. Raven's radically different, right? Starfire. Now, the basic gist of the first volume is, like I said, all these weird things are happening to these teenagers, right? They're all freaking out, what's going on? You also have this character called Joey, who has the ability to sort of jump into other people's bodies. It's kind of a weird ability he was able to gain. But all these teenagers trying to figure out what's going on to them, what's happening. They eventually find out that they eventually find a place called Star Labs. And they find out that this was all a giant conspiracy because they've been getting all these visions to help this random Starfire lady. They find this random Starfire lady, but they learn that they were basically created as a result of this illegal corporation, Star Labs, doing all these things to them when they were very little. Also, their fake family, their family that they know is all fake. Like I said, wild stuff. They eventually do find Starfire. She's an alien, just like in the main continuity. She just looks more pink, and she just looks a lot more like an alien here instead of a normal human, which is a fine change. I mean, she speaks to her English is broken in the series, which is fine. They eventually find Starfire, and then Starfire links up with Raven, while the other characters are basically gone into hiding because, like I said, Star Labs and the other people are going to try to find them, right? The second volume kind of kicks off from the aftermath. We see Cyborg basically slowly being taken over by this liquid metal stuff. They're all in the hideout. There's also this new character called Temperus, who's kind of like a aquatic creature that was found at the very end of the first volume. He joined the group. They're kind of hiding out. Eventually, there's a group called the Titans, there was like a separate wing of the Star Labs project called Blackgate. And it's ran by this guy called Niles Calder, who famously is the leader of the Doom Patrol, right? Here's like these very demented, creepy guy, but here he sends his so-called children or Titans, who are actually just, like I said, the same thing as the Titans, the other characters, right? Just children he happened to experiment with and happened to work. But this time around, they were brainwashed into thinking they were actually his children. Like I said, really dark stuff. But these Titans fight these other characters. They eventually all go to, the lab with Niles Calder. We also have Slade here, who, like I said, there's a whole thing where Joey, the guy who I mentioned earlier that can jump bodies, jumped into his own father's body, who in this version is Deathstroke. And his armor doesn't even look like Deathstroke. And that's one of my kind of critiques. Like, I wish they would have made his armor actually look like Deathstroke. Regardless, but they all go to the, Star Labs Blackgate facility. They meet Niles, and they eventually all link up. They eventually figure out that, like, they convince the other children, the Titans, that, he's all no good. We need to leave. We need to leave this horrible place. And eventually they do, before, with the help of Starfire and Raven also come to help. And they also fight like a weird clone version of Starfire. Joey actually leaves as his father's body. There's like a whole dilemma with them too. He leaves into his body because he believes Niles was right, kidnaps him, leaves him for, like a future volume that's never going to happen. And eventually, back in Raven's place, which is kind of like a reservation because, she's inspired by Indians, they all kind of gather around, and, the other children, the Titans, I forgot to mention, there's Wonder Girl, Cole, and Wally West. Yes, the Flash here as well. They all join the group, and that basically ends the book and the series. It's kind of, I don't know if I said all that correctly, but that's just kind of like from on the top of my head what was actually happening. Like I said, it's a very radically different take. My quick thoughts on this is it's very radically different. There's a lot of really weird things happening in this series. Some things I think work, some things I think don't. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I think the cyborg stuff was actually really interesting. I like the Terra stuff. I like their relationship. It was something new, but it was interesting. Beast Boy was pretty good. Starfire was pretty good here. I do think it's interesting that there's no Robin here. I'm not, like I said, I'm not entirely sure what would be what's up with that. I know there is a Robin in Earth 1, but I mean, who knows, right? Raven, I don't know. I still prefer the traditional origin with her. I think that her being a daughter of like a demon was a lot better, because I did think that gave her like much interesting perspective. Here being like a, like as more of an Indian, like Native American character, I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest. It's very weird. It doesn't like break the book for me, but it's also just like, I don't know. I do like the overall tone of the book. It really feels like the Runaways meet like T-Titans and DC. And I really like the vibe of the book. I think it's really good. I think the first book is pretty good. It's like a good origin story. And the second book's pretty good too. It's still more of the origin stuff. And it's kind of a shame because these whole two books are really just origin story. And it's sad because we're never going to actually get another book where they actually properly form the T-Titans, right? The proper team that goes out to fight stuff. Here, this is all just an expanded origin story, which is fine. Creates, gives a lot of context and interest. I do wish the books were a bit more denser so they can pack more material in. But still, I think overall the writing was pretty well done. The art was really great in both volumes. I think, like I said, usual qualities about a comic book that I would expect are well done here. Some of the story changes are pretty wild to me. Like I said, the Raven thing, not entirely sure. The Deathstroke thing also threw me off a bit too, and I just don't like how he looks in this comic, to be honest with you. The Niles thing, I could see basically, because in Doom Patrol, there were definitely parts where he could have definitely been the villain for sure. But Here they just went full villain, which I was completely fine with. I do like some of the other characters. I think it was cool that Wally West was here, so I guess we technically did get the Earth 1 Flash in a way. Beast Boy was pretty cool in this book. I did like Tara and Cyborg's relationship here. I think that Joey and his father Slade, their relationship was definitely an interesting contrast. Something new and interesting I've never seen with like DC stuff, right? Starfire was interesting, but I do think I would have loved to learn more about her. We do get a bit more about her in the second volume, but not quite enough in my opinion. But like I said, overall, this is a pretty decent series. It's a really radically different take on the Teen Titans. I do like the vibe of it. I like how it's like a runaway science fiction story. I do think parts of it absolutely do get carried away from themselves, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like Teen Titans. Especially at the end of the second volume where there's like some radically different changes. Like Cyborg, like I said, he becomes less of an actual look for Cyborg and more of just he hangs around a giant robot that happens to be like connected to him. It's a very strange difference they do at the end. But like I said, I do like overall the tone of this book. I do like some of the interesting radical changes. Some things don't work. Some story elements don't work. It's still kind of a mixed bag for me, but overall, it's a pretty decent Earth 1 title. I wouldn't say it's great. Like, I didn't like this as much as Earth 1 Superman, but overall, it's a pretty interesting and radically different take on the Teen Titans. It's overall pretty decent. So, yeah, just want to give you my quick thoughts on the Earth 1 Teen Titans. All right, so that'll be it, y'all. Peace, y'all. Peace.